Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Morning and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Richard Essex. Let's begin by talking inflation and the soaring prices of gas here in Indiana. Prices set a new record again this week. The state's average topped $4.62 per gallon. Analysts say $5 is not out of the question this year. Our first topic of conversation is with Congresswoman Victoria Sparks.
I want to talk about what everybody's talking about here in America, and that, of course, is gas prices and inflation. We've been talking about it for some time. So what is the Republican plan to fix that? I mean, we've talked about the Keystone Pipeline a number of times, but besides that, what are Republicans pitching to fix high gas prices and high inflation?
Well, if you think about it, what is causing inflation, right? So, inflation, it's a matter of supply and demand, right? So we created already a problem with a large supply of cash, and, we needed to do some cash to address crises. But unfortunately, our approaches are not targeted, and we waste 90% and not have a targeted approach. So we have a lot of supply of cash. Then we have a supply chain issue, right, which causes a lot of constraints on the other side. And we're not dealing with supply chain issue. Regardless what we think about, regardless if it's China or not, we cannot be dependent so much on one country, with our supply, especially strategic supply. So now China is accumulating, and manipulating, this supplies. Think about it. We do farming. The price of farm chemicals increased 6 times. The price of fuel, because we decided this utopian energy policies, increased 4 times, diesel fuel. The price of fertilizers is 6 times. Think about all of the input cost we're going to have on farm products.
So how do you fix that, though?
By good policies, by actually creating good manufacturing policies that we can produce some of this supplies in our country, by cutting the regulation instead of choking our businesses and industry with unreasonable laws, by incentivizes more production in the country, or diversifying where we're not dependent on China, but have a diversification in Latin America and Europe, so we have more friends and allies being our partners. We are not doing that. We increase in taxes, we increase in regulations. We have government more and more controlling, and then say you're going to invest. So that's not helping. We have a very utopian energy policies, which is really stupid too, because it's driving the crisis. Then on top of it, we have a war. So it was all of the things that were happening bad. Now Russia and China are taking advantage. Russia's blocked Ukrainian ports, where it's 20% of world grain. And think about it, it's not just going to destabilize Europe, it's going to destabilize North Africa, South America, countries like Sri Lanka. So this is going to be huge destabilization.
So, and I'll get to the war in moments. I know it's near and dear to your heart, but is there anything Congress can do right now to fix inflation?
Well, Republicans can win, okay? Unfortunately, win the minority. That's number one thing for me as a Republican. We have to win Congress and have some good policies to promote, more in manufacturing in our country, more innovation, less regulation, better energy policy. I mean, it will be tough because we still have a Democrat president. We don't know how the Senate is going to be, but we have to be smart and have a policies that benefit our people. And right now the policies make things more expensive.
Let's move on to the war in Ukraine now. Obviously, it's very close to you. You're keeping a close eye on it overseas. What are your thoughts on what the Ukraine's military has been able to do to ward off the invasion from Russia?
Well, I think, this is impressive. What they were able to do was not really being given the proper support. Unfortunately, West been slow working this issue and really dragging their feet. And unfortunately, the reality is you either be proactive or reactive. And being reactive always costs you more than being proactive. We didn't learn from mistakes of World War II. We also took, again, Chamberlain approach instead of Churchill. But I think the administration now start understanding that it's not just become an issue of Ukraine or Europe. It's becoming a worldwide escalation of crisis. And if we don't deal with it decisively and not try to put pressure on Putin to get to the table, it's going to escalate further. And I think, Russia and China is trying to take advantage of weaknesses of the West. So I think we're getting better now. United States is sending a better message right now and sending better weapons, because unfortunately, there is only way to stop the Russian army's weapons. Being nice, it just doesn't work with them. I wish it would, but then maybe we can have a conversation.
That being said, there is some opposition from Congress, including many members of your party, including Indiana Senator Mike Braun, about pushing back on more aid to Ukraine. He even went as far as saying that the $40 billion that was given to them was bloated.
Well, I think, from my personal perspective, from 40 billion, more should be given to actual security assistance. We're giving them this time a little bit more because a lot of people don't realize only a small part goes directly to Ukraine. A lot of this aid goes to our country to replenish our military supplies internally, help European allies, and a lot of different things. So in the first bill from 13.6 billion, only a few billions were actually given directly to Ukraine. And the question is where the rest of them went. And that's why I called the oversight hearing today. And we're trying to get to some numbers, make sure, because we do need to have proper oversight. We need to have more targeted approaches to issues, because when we deal with crises, you need to have more targeted approach. And unfortunately, a lot of times the crisis is used where much more things are spent on things that may be related but not relevant to the issues. But I think this package that we're discussing, it's a better in the way that we do have provide better security assistance, because that's the best humanitarian aid. We're trying to put more, diversifying how the other assistance is done, have a better oversight, but there's still some work that needs to happen about implementation of oversight. Giving money to international organizations like UN, we did last time, didn't get anything to us. They just pay big salaries.
I'm almost out of time with you, but I want to just ask you about the baby formula shortage, if you don't mind. And I appreciate you taking some time, as always. What should the government be doing to help ease this up?
I think, to tell you the truth, we need to reform FDA. FDA became a political organization with a lot of drama and big government. A lot of these agencies playing politics with people's lives. And it's USDA and FDA and EPA and all these organizations. So I think, baby formula situation is directly related to politics of an FDA. And I think we cannot continue doing that way. We need to provide safety standards. We need to be, hold, companies accountable, but we also cannot create now these agencies, this barrier to competitions, that no one can enter markets. And I think they create oligopolies and monopolies problem, because if we would not have oligopolies running now our industries, then we wouldn't have problems with baby formulas, because we would have much more company provided. And I think that is something that the big discussion we need to have as a country.
Victoria Spartz, Congresswoman from Indiana, thank you very much for taking some time, as always.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, state lawmakers get ready to vote on overturning the governor's veto of the transgender athletes bill. A former Indianapolis mayor says doing it would be a bad idea. We'll talk to him next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. As we turn to the State House, state lawmakers return to work on Tuesday, and the top item on the agenda, voting to overturn Governor Eric Holcomb's veto of the transgender athletes bill. It would prevent transgender girls from taking part in school-sponsored sports. The governor called the bill unnecessary. Now Greg Ballard, the former Republican mayor of Indianapolis, is telling fellow Republicans, let the veto stand. Former mayor of Indianapolis, Greg Ballard, thank you for coming in this morning. Lawmakers are getting ready to come back on Tuesday, and one of the issues that they're going to be addressing is the governor's veto of the transgender bill. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, unfortunately, I think they're probably going to override the veto. I hope that they don't, but because this was an unnecessary bill. The IHSAA has been on top of this for years. There's no precipitating incident whatsoever. There seems to be a law that's made up, and as Republicans, they should be looking at limited government. What's the right thing to do? Why have the oppressive arm of government solve this issue when they solve the problem of which there is no issue? That's the problem to me, is passing another law that seems completely unnecessary.
Yeah, the way the bill was written is it really only impacted female sports. It didn't impact men's sports. And so it seemed to kind of target a specific group of people and not just across the board. Is that language they could fix?
Well, they probably could, but I hope they just leave the veto in place, because that's what I think is the best thing to do. I know what they're trying to do, and everybody's for the equality of competition. That's not the issue, but the IHSAA already had that in place. And so why are we passing a law? And it's really because of these national organizations like ALEC and Heritage Foundation who come up with these poll-tested questions, and so they can take it back to their individual states and pass these measures which make them look better at home, but don't do anything. And again, passing a law, an unnecessary law, that's not what Republicans are supposed to do, who profess to be for limited government, which I am for also. And I just don't understand why they're doing this.
This felt like one of those bills, one of those laws where people could take it back to their district and say, look what I did. And even for the governor to veto it, it still feels like for him, if his career is going to go beyond, look what I did. I vetoed this.
It is interesting in that aspect because sometimes people do vote for the future, if you will, which I think is problematic. I certainly, when I was the mayor, what's the best thing for the city of Indianapolis? And I kind of looked at it from that angle, not from what I'm going to be doing next. And you can see that I did not move on to anything, at least so far, because I thought I had to do what was best for the city of Indianapolis. And I think they should do that also and not worry about what's going to happen in the future. I found out that doing what's best works politically also, but this one it bothers me just because of the oppressive nature of it, because it's completely unnecessary, and some national organization says you should look at this, it's going to make you look good back at home. That's not the way to be governing. They should be governing what's the best thing to do for the state of Indiana in the long term, and this is not it.
In 2015, when the General Assembly passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, you, as the Republican mayor of Indianapolis, asked the lawmakers to repeal it. Do you feel like we're going down the same path again?
It seems very similar because it's one of these culture ideas, if you will, that really doesn't advance the state of Indiana. In fact, as we all know, that made Indiana a laughingstock throughout the country for a few months, and it was disturbing on that level. And what the message that it sent had to be overcome by lots of hard work right after that. And I don't know why we want to do this again. I realize other states are doing the same thing, and they think they're doing something and saying, we're trying to make it good for your young women and everything, but that's really not what this does. And it's just, sports organizations should handle this. We should have less government. That's the whole point of what we're trying to do in limited government, and the founders of the country and natural rights and all those sorts of things. That's what conservatives are supposed to be about, but that's not what this law is about.
On Tuesday, when lawmakers come back, there are a couple of other items that are on their agenda, but the one that's going to get the most attention is going to be the transgender bill, and that's going to be the one that the people take back to their district. What will surprise you on Tuesday when they leave that building?
If they let the veto stand, that would surprise me. I hope they do that, and I hope they do some soul searching and say, is this a necessary law? Is this in concert with what we actually stand for as Republicans and as conservatives? Because I don't think it does at all. But I hope that they do the right thing here, and uphold the governor's veto.
Mayor, thank you for coming in. Enjoy the race.
I will. Thank you.
Take All Indiana Politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome back into All Indiana Politics as we welcome back two members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Whitley Yates and Democrat Kip Two. Now, you just heard my interview with Mayor Greg Ballard. Whitney, he says Republicans are listening to national groups and passing a bill that's something for a problem that doesn't even exist here in Indiana. Is he wrong?
My personal opinion is there's many different thoughts on this specific topic within the GOP. We're not a monolithic group, as I've continuously said, and I think that some people feel like he's not wrong and other people feel like he is wrong. The truth of the matter is that the current legislator, they're elected to represent the ideas of their constituency. And so if there is an override of the veto, then it is the heart of the people and the constituency that the legislator is representing.
Kip.
I agree with former Mayor Ballard 100%. I believe that he couldn't have said it any better. I will just probably garble it by my comments, but he was very smart in what he said. The only thing I would add is the addition is that this is really hurtful to the most vulnerable people that you can imagine in our society. transgender people get piled on over and over and over again. And there's been exactly one student in Indiana that this has affected. And the IHSAA is the proper body to control these issues, to deal with these issues. It is really beneath the time of the Indiana legislature to be getting into something that hasn't even happened in Indiana. And so I would hope they would sustain the veto.
Kip, what would an override of his veto mean for the governor for his future politics here in the state?
I think it's one of those things that if he gets into a Senate race primary, it could become for him a little bit of an issue, but I think that it will fade into the background because I anticipate that what he does on the upcoming abortion debate will be more central to his fight for that Senate campaign, if indeed he does that.
Willie, what do you think?
I mean, I'm going to be honest. In one sentence, Kip is saying that this isn't an issue in the state of Indiana. Why are we taking it up? And in the next sentence, he says it's an attack on the most vulnerable population and it's going to do so much damage. Either it's happening and it's pervasive in the state and they're trying to do something to stop it, or it's not. You can't have it both ways. And I think
I can actually. I can have it both ways because it doesn't make sense what you just said.
It makes no sense.
Transgender people are beat up on. That's what I was saying. I wasn't saying that you completely misinterpreted what I said. I said this is beating up on a population that's very vulnerable.
Messenger, so maybe your message didn't get across adequately.
Okay.
Kip, moving forward, are the Republicans listening to outside national interest groups when they're bringing up this kind of legislation?
Well, I think that, it's kind of come across the United States. Because, it doesn't appear to me that Republicans want to attack the real problems that Indiana faces. Why don't we have a cut in the sales tax on gasoline when people are hurting because of inflation? Why doesn't the governor exercise his authority on those things?
Let's skip forward. Whitley, is now the time for Republicans, when they come back to the State House on Tuesday, to start action on suspending the gas tax?
Listen, the problem with our gas is not an Indiana issue. And I think the Democrats know that, and they're pawning it off as an Indiana issue. We have a PPP issue, and that is piss poor presidential leadership. The reason why our gas prices are so high, the reason why when we go to the pump, we're sighing, is because the leadership in the White House, his open checkbook policy, his extreme energy policies that he started on day one when he entered office by stopping pipelines, and he's attacked the energy industry the entire time that he's been in office. And so now we're seeing the results of his piss poor presidential leadership. And now he needs Indiana, or Indiana Democrats want Indiana to fix issues that are caused in DC by the lack of leadership, instead of making him accountable for the decisions that he's made, making him accountable for the fact that he has these open checkbook policies and has outrageous spending. And so I find it very interesting that the Indiana Democrats want Indiana Republicans to fix Joe Biden, Washington, D.C. issues. It's outrageous to me.
Indiana has one of the highest gas taxes in the state. I think it's 73 cents a gallon right now, and it goes up every single year without any kind of action from the General Assembly. Republicans put that into place a couple of years ago. Kip, is now the time to suspend the gasoline tax for 60, 90 days, or maybe through the rest of the summer?
Yeah, I mean, Democrats propose giving people a break. The reason gas prices are high are very many. I think Whitley's dead wrong on her reasons why she said that the gasoline prices are so high. Record profits by all the oil companies in the world. They're gouging us. And what Republicans could do, they have all the power. They have the power in the legislature, and they have the power in the governor's office. They could get a break to Hoosiers. And as you correctly stated, we have the highest gas taxes in the country, and that's because of Republican leadership, very deliberate. When Democrats were in control, right, Frank O'Bannon suspended the sales tax on gas.
We're going to have to leave it right there. Both of you.
The excise tax, sorry.
Thank you very much, both of you. Kip, Whitley, been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the All Indiana Politics. You can find us every day on the All Indiana Politics podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. You will not have us here next Sunday because of the Indianapolis 500. Have a great rest of your weekend.